Second reading, Senate Bill 1261. The clerk will read the bill.
SB 1261 by Perry, relating the financing of water supply projects, included the state water plan, authorizing the issuance of obligations.
Chair recognizes Mr. Gertis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 1261 provides a new financing tool to help the needs of our state develop large-scale, long-term water infrastructure projects, and I believe there's an amendment.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Van Dever.
Chair recognizes Mr. Van Dever.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment simply says that anything that has been in the plan for the water plan for 50 years and uses eminent domain will not be eligible for financing.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Hefner, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for a couple of questions?
Gentleman yield for questions?
Sure.
Gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dever. Mr. Van Dever, you would agree that private property rights are a foundational cornerstone of our system of government here, would you not?
Absolutely. That is the foundation of Texas, is the opportunity to own private property.
And so you would agree that it's not right for the government to come in and take potentially thousands of acres of land by force from people who have lived on property, farmed on property, grew up on property that's been in their family for generations, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, again, that flies in the face of what it means to be a Texan.
Right.
To come have the government come in and say we're taking your land. I'll say that, and I recognize that eminent domain sometimes is necessary, and we realize that there is a purpose for eminent domain. But when you basically call dibs on someone's land for over 50 years, and basically they can't build a house, they can't build a barn, they can't build fences for 50 years, that's unfair, and that's anti-Texan in my opinion.
So when a plan has been in place for over 50 years and people that may live in the area affected by this, they can't plan, they can't invest, they can't build. There's things
that's right.
because of the unknown.
Absolutely. They own the property, but they can't really feel free to make improvements on the property because they know this cloud's hanging over them, that at some point the state's going to come in and say, no, we called dibs on this land back 40 years ago, and today we decide we want it, and so we're going to take it.
Right. So these people have been living there, working, farming, raising their kids for generations, could just have it snatched away.
Absolutely.
So another question is, when a project like some of these could take place, not only is a reservoir built that takes tens of thousands of acres, is there not mitigation land that could come with that as well?
Yes, the federal government now requires mitigation when you take land out of production, which this is prime hardwood timber bottomland. When you take that out of production, the federal government requires you to set aside land to replace what you're taking out of production. So it's not just a matter of taking 80,000 acres for a reservoir, it's now taking 160,000 acres because of the reservoir and because of the mitigation.
And that's land that's maybe not in the plan and is unknown where it would even be, right?
That's right. We don't know. So it could be your land. It could be my land. It could be anyone in here, land across Texas.
So your amendment is a huge step in protecting the private property rights of people around Texas.
Absolutely. That's
Thank
exactly
you, sir.
what it is.
I'm proud to support your amendment. Thank you for bringing
Thank
it.
you.
Mr. Romero, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, I rise a point of order under House Rule 11, Section 2. The amendment is not germane.
Please bring your point of order down front.
The point of order is withdrawn. The chair recognizes Mr. Turner in opposition to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, it's been a few minutes since this amendment was laid out, so let me just remind everyone what it does. Mr. Van Dever, who I have great respect for, and I know he's doing what his district would like to see, is proposed an amendment that would imperil the Marvin Nichols Reservoir, which is a critically important surface water resource for the state of Texas as a whole and for the North Texas region, the Dallas-Fort Worth area in particular. And I just want to take a couple of minutes, because I know other people are going to speak on this as well, just to walk through a brief history of this project. This is not a new proposal, the Marvin Nichols Reservoir. The Marvin Nichols Reservoir was first mentioned as a possible water resource in early state water planning dating back to 1968, before I was born. And following the passage of Senate Bill 1 back in 1997, before the vast majority of us were in the legislature, the Marvin Nichols Reservoir has consistently, in some form or fashion, been a part of long-term state water planning. It was in the 2001, 2006, 2011, 2016, and 2021 Region C regional water plans. It was in the 2001 Region D water plan, and in the 2002, 2007, 2012, 2017, and 2022 state water plans. It's been a recommended strategy in all of those plans going back decades. And in 2007, the Texas legislature designated the Marvin Nichols Reservoir site as a site of unique value for the construction of a reservoir. And the reason for that is the abundant surface water supply, the ability to capture a lot of flood waters that otherwise would simply go out into the Gulf of Mexico. And fundamentally, this is about ensuring a stable water supply for a region, the North Texas region, which is going to be more than 10 million people by the year 2070. Today, the DFW area is more than a quarter of our state's population. And as a matter of policy, members, we have a Texas Water Development Board. I'm reading from their report here, their feasibility review that came out earlier this year on Marvin Nichols. And we have charged the Water Development Board with ensuring that our state water plan works for the long-term continued economic growth of our state and ensure we have sufficient water supply. We can't undermine them by bringing an amendment at the 11th hour.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Guerin, for what purpose?
would the gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
The gentleman yields.
Mr. Turner, are you aware in this last recent water/flood event in North Texas that we've released from the lakes above Fort Worth and through Fort Worth over 51 billion gallons of water?
That is my
That
understanding.
is water that we were not able to store because we were flooding those areas above the dams. Are you aware of that?
That's right. 51 billion.
51 billion gallons.
That's right.
And these lakes were lakes that were really low because of the drought.
Absolutely.
Were you aware also that I served on the board of Tarrant Regional Water District and then the Texas Water Development Board when the water plans were first put forward?
I did not know that.
I left the Texas Water Development Board when I ran for the legislature in 2001. So Marvin Nichols is you're aware that Marvin Nichols in our forward planning has been always on the table as a source for water, and that we have tried to buy water from Oklahoma and been unsuccessful. You aware of that?
I'm very aware of that. And absolutely, Marvin Nichols goes back to 1968 in early state water plans. So it's been on the books for a long time.
Are you also aware that over $10 million of taxpayer dollars have already been spent on planning and engineering on Marvin Nichols?
Yes.
Mr. Turner, this amendment needs to go down, and I appreciate you speaking against it today.
Thank you, Chairman Guerin, and I appreciate your long-standing commitment to long-term water planning in this state. Once again, members, we can't just undermine our long-term water planning and the work of the Water Development Board by saying we don't like one of their decisions, so we're going to bring a last-minute amendment to undo all the good work they've done. Please vote no on this amendment.
Surface water belongs to the state.
And finally, an important reminder, the surface water belongs to the state of Texas, not to any one region, county, or person. It belongs to the state, to all of us.
The chair recognizes Ms. Gonzalez of El Paso to speak for the amendment.
Members, when James Frank and I and Cecil Bell and I and Trent Ashby and I came in 13 years ago, and Ken King, in the 13 years I've been here, the committee hearing where we heard this bill was the most I don't even have the words to describe it. The most powerful committee hearing I have ever sat in. We heard from families who live in the Marvin Nichols Reservoir who said, I have to tell my grandmother that she may not be buried next to her grandfather because it might be flooded. I have to tell my children that our 100-year generation ranch may not be theirs anymore. This isn't just about water. This is about people's lives. This is about generations of families that have lived in East Texas. And you may wonder, why does a West Texas representative stand up and give this speech for an East Texas project? And not just because Representative Van Dever is an amazing representative, but mostly because there is an injustice that has been happening in East Texas for 50 years. Imagine not knowing if you can keep your home. Imagine being in limbo for your family and your industry. Imagine having a farm and not knowing if you're going to be able to keep it. This is not a heartache we should wish on anybody. Of course I love our Central Texas area or North Texas area that is planning to potentially use this reservoir in their future. But this is not an us versus them battle at all. There will still be resources for that area. The thing is that reservoirs are the most outdated way for water supply. There are better ways, and by supporting one community and saying, we're not gonna pick East Texas to lose so one other region can win, we're gonna say we're gonna protect all our regions and push the agency to pick a water supply that does not make people lose their homes, their graveyards, their farms and their ranches, to make the timber industry of Texas completely annihilated. Members, this is a really big deal, not only to East Texas, because what makes Texas beautiful is that we have West Texas and East Texas and North Texas and South Texas and everything in between. But right now, the plan allows for East Texas to literally be drowned and taken away. And for that reason, I stand with East Texas in this moment in time.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Howard, for what purpose?
would the lady yield?
Will the lady yield for questions?
Of course.
The lady yields.
You know, this is a battle I really don't want to step into because we all have water needs and we're all looking at the different ways we can get it. So I understand the conflicts. But did you know that I came to the legislature at the beginning of 2006, but I believe it was in 2007 when this was an issue on the House floor at that time? Did you know that?
I actually did not know that.
And I remember being kind of having an aha moment when the East Texas representative said to the Dallas area representative, sometimes my people that live in my community that are dependent on this water, they understand that sometimes you have to turn the faucet off. And I think the idea was that they were good stewards of that water, that it was water that was important to their community, and that they were concerned about some of the uses that might go on to water green lawns and that sort of thing. Regardless, again, I don't want to step into it, but at the same time, I think what you're saying here is also an issue that needs to be thought about when we're trying to make these decisions. We all need this precious resource, do we not?
We do, and that came up in committee about also encouraging conservation efforts, and by taking away this part of the plan, we will encourage more conservation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please, members, let's not let one part of Texas be destroyed.
The chair recognizes Mr. Patterson in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is a critical vote that we're about to take on this amendment. What was otherwise a really good bill for the future of water in this state has this amendment that could be added that will destroy lives in DFW, in Houston, and other urban areas. Members, taxpayers have spent more than $10 million on the engineering and design of this reservoir, only for a handful of members to try to take it off the map. We have professionals who work in this industry that worked for the state of Texas planning for decades, 57 years, planning for this reservoir to be in East Texas. Folks, we have 1,600 people moving to Texas every single day. 1,600 people a day moving to this state. We are now becoming the 7th largest economy in the world. Our needs for water are tremendous, and we are going to spend billions of dollars on developing those resources through legislation and through the budget this session. But to take a huge opportunity off the map that has been in the plans for 57 years is not right. It's not right for members who represent constituents in Dallas County and in Tarrant County and in Collin County and in Denton County or in Harris County or in Travis County. It's not right. This has been on the books. We have spent millions of hard-earned taxpayer dollars on this project, and we need to move forward with it. We need to vote down this amendment and save this bill so that we can vote to advance this bill through the process.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Romero, for what purpose?
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
I would love
the gentleman
to.
Yields.
Chairman Patterson, you realize, you do know that this amendment is doing in effect what the author of the amendment's bill that did not come to the floor. It does, in essence, but it's a go-around. His bill said, let's remove Marvin Nichols from the water development plan, although this was the furthest out part of our water plan in North Texas. Countless lakes, and those of us that are from the North Texas region, I'm sure you're aware, have done everything in our power to not affect these folks' land through conservation, through wetlands, through moving water from one part of our region to another, potentially up to 100 miles. And rather than wait until that bill got to the floor, this is an end-around amendment that talks about we're not going to finance any projects over 50 years. So in effect, not only are we talking about Marvin Nichols, we're talking about doing away with what it means to plan for the future of this state to grow. Do you believe that that's what we should be doing, is take away planning needs when every single one of us knows that not only do we need water, but we need affordable water?
We do. That's absolutely right. And this lake is going to be vitally important to the future of this state. I mean, at a time where we're growing like crazy, both in population and economically, we need all the water we can get. We're about to spend billions of dollars on developing new sources of water this session. This is not congruent with that task that we have before us. This is taking a tool out of the toolbox for absolutely no. Now, I will say this. I have the utmost respect for my friends over in East Texas, and I understand why they're fighting this fight. I do, and I've got the utmost respect for them. But sure, this needs to be in the plan for all of Texas to survive.
Chairman, and just to one of the points that was brought up a second ago, are you aware of any aquifer that's ready right now for aquifer storage, where we could do aquifer storage recovery, where we could put 51 billion gallons of water in right now?
I'm not aware of one, and when you look at what our lakes have been able to accomplish through the rainfall that we've had, and to have that trickle down to these other lakes and bring them up when they were, a dozen or so feet under, and now those lakes are being able to be topped off, and this lake would be able to fit into that same program.
Well, I think that for anyone that doesn't know where we are, I'm thankful to be in Chairman Harris's Committee on Natural Resources, where we've been studying aquifer storage recovery, and we just had a bill that was voted down because folks are not comfortable with putting clean water, what's otherwise clean water, with TCEQ's already said we'll put that because folks are afraid it's going to get, it's actually going to contaminate their otherwise good groundwater. So the cheapest, most affordable, that none of us want to pass this on to our ratepayers to say, well, we can do desal and others. We're going to do that after we can't continue to catch water. And I am thankful for your leadership on this, and I'll be voting no on this amendment.
Thank you, sir. And I'll just say, again, $10 million of hard-earned taxpayer money has been spent on this project already. I've heard people say, well, you know, they can just put it somewhere else. Well, we did. We put it somewhere else 57 years ago, right here where this amendment would strip it out. And I encourage you and beg you all to vote no on this amendment.
Please excuse Mr. Lowe because of important business on a motion of Mr. Alcott. Is there objection? The chair is none so ordered. The chair recognizes Mr. Hefner for the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is about protecting the private property rights of hardworking East Texas families. If this project was so important, if it was such a good idea, why hasn't it been built in 57 years? It's a $5 billion project. It's going to take 70,000 acres, family land that's been in these families for decades, for generations. It's going to take that land out of production. They're going to have to move their families. Not only does it flood over 70,000 acres of good family land, there's anywhere from another 70,000 acres to 210,000 additional acres for the mitigation that will be dedicated for this project. We don't know where that's going to be. We don't know who that's going to affect. Taking land from hardworking Texas families by the government is never right. Never. We may be outnumbered in East Texas. There may be more in the urban areas and the rural areas, but we're right on this. And by God, we're not going to give up our land so people can keep their swimming pools full in the cities. So please join me in voting for this amendment.
Chair recognizes Ms. Pearson in opposition to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I think you can tell that the opposition to this amendment is very bipartisan. And I'm not going to repeat what some of my colleagues have said, and I respect the author and the purpose of why he brought the amendment, but I will say that this body continues to push growth in our communities. It continues to restrict municipalities from controlling that growth. And I come from a district that is growing very, very quickly, and we ran out of water in North Texas. That's what this is about. And this has been a planned project for a very long time. Everyone knows you can't build these things overnight or in 5 years or 10 years and even 20 years. This is not an unknown thing. If you live in North Texas, you cannot support this amendment. I was actually going to vote for the bill. But this is a serious problem in our state. You have to respect all members in our state. And we just passed, or you just passed, dozens of MUDs in our state. And guess what? You're going to need water. So I really hope you've double-checked that those homes that you're about to build in your districts are going to have access to water, because if this is the precedent that we're going to set, that 57 years later we're going to decide to cut water off to those districts, you're going to be responsible for that. I'm not going to go home and tell my district, by the way, 57 years later we're cutting off water to my district, and we have thousands of homes that are in the process of being built. So I encourage you all to vote no on this amendment.
The chair recognizes Ms. Luther to speak for the amendment.
Hello, members. I humbly stand next to my colleagues Cole Hefner and Mr. Van Dever. I live in North Texas, and I'm absolutely voting for this amendment. You want to know why? Because my district also includes Franklin County, where this reservoir is, and all these people have ever asked for was to please keep them out of our reservoir. They're humble, quiet people here. They don't ask much. Just protect our reservoir. And it should not be taken, not just to fill swimming pools, but to water the lawns of other people. That's not their responsibility. And we must protect their land and their livelihood there. And so I ask you to please vote for this amendment. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Mr. Van Dever to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, you know I'm not here very often offering amendments to bills. And I had asked Mr. Gerdes if it was okay to offer this amendment and let him know that I was about to do it. That's the way I like to operate. I want to ask you, what if this was in your district? What if this was your family? What if this was land that your grandfather homesteaded or your great-grandfather homesteaded? We all recognize that we have serious water issues in Texas, and especially in North Texas. And as I said in the committee, and as I have told my colleagues and will continue to say, I am committed to helping us solve those issues, helping us find a way to provide water where it's needed in North Texas. But I ask you to join me in doing that in a way that we can also protect the families in Northeast Texas. It doesn't have to be an either-or. We can do both. We're Texas. We solve big problems, and we have big solutions, and we can fix this issue.
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
The gentleman yields.
I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you bringing this amendment forward. Just for clarity, did we hear that there are lakes that were empty already?
Yes.
So if we were to create another lake, does it create an assurance of water?
No. A reservoir is really outdated technology, and they, when they stick the big straw in and suck the water out, many times, they leave the lake really unusable. There are people who say, well, Northeast Texas is going to get a great lake to use. Well, the Cooper Lake, which is just upstream from where this is proposed, it's 100 feet from the boat ramp to the water line. You can't get a boat in because of the amount of water being pulled out. And yet you can drive around the Dallas area and you cross lakes that are full because people have sailboats and ski boats and fishing boats, and they're using those lakes for recreation.
And so the consequence of those practices is that there's not a distribution of water across the state. There's a holding of that water at a point and what you just described, as I understood it, was recreational purposes.
That's right. Yeah. We are blessed in East Texas. We do have water. Other areas are blessed with oil. Some are blessed with wind energy. Some are blessed with natural gas. Water is our blessing, and we need to protect it. But more than that, our land is our blessing. Our homesteads are our blessing, and our families are the blessing. And that's what I'm trying to protect here today.
Private property rights of Texans across this state is what you're trying to protect?
Absolutely. It comes down to private property rights. And we have always stood for the property owner here in this building. And I want to continue to do that, and I'm asking everyone to join me in that.
Well, I believe it's the strongest commitment we can make, and I appreciate your amendment, and I'll be voting for your amendment.
Thank you. Members.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Schofield, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes.
Gentleman yields.
Mr. Van Dever, are you aware that almost 20 years ago, we did research back when Senator Troy Frazier was chair of state affairs, and they found that when you have an above-ground reservoir, over 50% of it evaporates before you can ever even use it.
That's exactly right. That's what the science shows. That's why I say reservoirs are so outdated technology because of the evaporation.
And yet, we come here, and many of us brag constantly that we're for private property rights, and that's a Texas foundation. And we're going to allow people to take 77,000 acres of private Texas land so that other people can continue to have water.
That's right. And the 77,000 acres does not include the mitigation. So you can at least double that when you consider the amount of land that's going to be taken with this project.
I think it's been many years ago that we've realized that the Marvin Nichols Reservoir is not the way to provide water. We have other ways to do it. We have better ways to do it. And we have ways that are going to be more useful in the future than the outdated technology. I appreciate your amendment, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Members, I want to close with, I said I used this story in committee. I want to close with this. I have an older brother, and when we were kids, he had a candy bar and I didn't. And I knew my mother, he knew my mother, would require him to share that candy bar with me. So when he got the candy bar, he unwrapped the candy bar completely and licked the entire candy bar because he wanted to reserve it for himself, whether he did not know whether he'd be able to eat the entire candy bar. He didn't know whether the candy bar was good, but he just wanted to keep me from having it. Members, I just feel like the North Texas group, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, has licked the candy bar. I'm asking you to stay with me, vote for this amendment, and set my people free. Thank you.
Mr. Van Dever sends up an amendment. The question occurs on the amendment. A record vote has been requested. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Van Dever voting aye. Show Mr. King voting aye. Show Ms. Gonzalez of El Paso voting aye. Show Ms. Luther voting aye. Show Mr. Hefner voting aye. Show Mr. Romero voting nay. Show Ms. A. Davis of Dallas voting nay. Show Mr. Colonel Wilson voting aye. Have all voted. There being 45 ayes, 91 nays, the amendment fails to adopt. Does any member wish to speak for, against, or on Senate Bill 1261? Hearing none, the chair recognizes Mr. Gerdes to close on the bill.
All right, now that we got through that, I move passage on this great water infrastructure financing bill.
Question occurs on passage to third reading of Senate Bill 1261. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. There being 125 ayes, 14 nays, Senate Bill 1261 is passed to third reading.
Speaker feeling for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, will you entertain the motion to reduce the writing any mentions of licking candy bars placed in the journal?
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection to the adoption of the motion? The chair hears none. The motion is adopted.